Hi, I'm Gene Reed. On 9/11, I was a professional staff member of the House Armed Services Committee on the third floor of the Rayburn Building in the committee staff offices. Normally, I came into work by Metro and was at my desk usually around 8:30. And the characteristic of the committee at that time was that we had, and they still have, a number of retired military on the professional staff. It was customary that in our offices we would usually have a small TV set so that we could keep track of what was going to be going on the floor of the house that particular day. And then in the bullpen, the outer office where all the staff assistants were, about 5 of them, there was a large TV as well. At any rate, sat down at my desk at around 8:30, I suppose, and was beginning to kind of look through what was going to be coming up that particular day. And then I glanced out of the corner of my eye, and because the TV was on, and it was the World Trade Center with smoke coming out the upper floors. I said, good grief, that's right about where the Windows on the World restaurant is. And so it was kind of a wow event, as you might guess. And so I got up and went out into the outer office and into the bullpen. And another of my colleagues were there as well, and we were looking at the larger TV. 2 or 3 of them were aviators, and of course I had remembered also the B-26 aircraft that struck the Empire State Building during World War II. And so one of the guys said, "Boy, that guy is really off course today." And we just kind of what had happened. And as we're doing that, then we talked and watched, and then all at once the second airplane came in and hit the World Trade Center, and it was clear that we had a major attack going. So at any rate, went back after we talked a little bit and watched to my own TV. And sat down. Don't remember if I tried to call my wife at that time or not. But at any rate, we were following the story as it developed. And there was a rumor coming over the TV that there had been a bomb attack at the State Department. And it's now around about 9:33 or so. And the word came in that the Pentagon had been struck as well. We continued to watch the TV. The House Capitol Police came through the offices and said, "Evacuate the building. We're closing down the Capitol Hill." And the staffers and support began to leave. And Doug Roach, Colonel of Air Force, and I was a retired Colonel Army, said, "Well, we're going to stay and watch monitor the telephones for a while, and to see if there's any calls coming in for the committee." And so we began to do that, and then about 10 minutes, 15 minutes after 10, the Capitol Police came through the offices and said, "Leave the Capitol." And we said, "Well, we really want to stay to continue this if we can work well and do our job." And they said, "No, you need to leave the Capitol now." And so anyway, down to the first floor of the building, left the Rayburn Building, and walked over to Independence Avenue, and began walking down the sidewalk in Independence Avenue. Hill people, private citizens, walking back and forth on Independence Avenue at that time. The word was that 14th Street Bridge was closed, and we wouldn't be able to get across that. Metro was also closed. And so I began what was really the second walking trip I took to the Pentagon in about 10 years, because I had also had to walk home when Air Florida went down during the snowstorm a number of years before. Walking down Independence Avenue, a good friend of mine, Larry Smith, who had been on the committee staff, came by. We talked for a few moments, and then he proceeded on to his home that was southeast of the Capitol complex. Across the Memorial Bridge, down Boundary Channel Drive, following that road, and essentially Washington Boulevard. Towards the Capitol, I could see, pardon me, not towards the Pentagon, and I could see the rescue work, all the emergency vehicles there on the west side of the Capitol. And so I then basically followed the track of Boundary Channel Drive across the east front of the Pentagon and into the Pentagon South parking. As I was, before I got to Pentagon South parking, I had run into several very good friends in Navy Legislative Liaison, and who I had worked with, and said, did all your guys get out? And they said, and are they all accounted for? And they said, well, everybody except Guma Tao Tao, and we've heard that he's over on the other side of the building, but it's okay. The next fellow I ran into was a former colleague from the House Appropriations Committee, John Young, who was at that time the Assistant Secretary of the Navy for Research, Development, and Acquisition. And I asked him how he was doing, and did all of his people get out as well? And he said, yes, they had. So continued on my trip down into across South parking. It was hot, and across South parking and through the Eads Street Tunnel onto Army-Navy Drive, and then down Army-Navy Drive and to where it crosses Lynn Street, and went up Lynn and swung back on Ridge Road just to take a look back at the Pentagon to see and observe the damage for a while. Probably really no more than 5 or 10 minutes. And then Army-Navy Drive towards our home on South Queen Street, passing one home that was more parishioners from Grace Church, our home parish, but who had a home there on Army-Navy Drive, correction, on Ridge Road, and they were passing out water bottles to people who were coming by. Got home, it's probably close to noon by then. My wife was, needless to say, very glad to see me. And we basically, through the remainder of the day, watched what was going on as far as what was coming over the TV and everything going on. In New York, the word of that the president was airborne, and just that continued, that just glued to the TV set that afternoon and into the evening. Tuesday evening, our church, Grace Church on Russell Road in Alexandria, had a Eucharist and healing service, and normally about 10 people or so would attend. We went to church for that service. The church had been opened up wide, and the Eucharist moved from the Lady Altar to the High Altar in the church, and the church was just absolutely packed with both congregants, but also people from off the street as well. The following day, it was the question of, well, are we going to be going back to work or not? We got the word that no, that not particular day we would be off. And so walked from our house there on South Queen back up to the Ridge Road and down to the end of Ridge to the Pentagon Overlook. There was still smoke and everything coming up from the vicinity of the Pentagon, and of course that wall had long since fallen. We continued, that is, from a professional standpoint. The issue was when would we be going back to work at the Rayburn Building. And we were called back in for it and spent a little hazy in my mind right now, but essentially we were there on Thursday, I know, and maybe on Friday. But Friday was also the day that the Senate had the anthrax event that led to the Senate offices being closed and for decontamination, and that as a result, the House offices also closed. The following week, staff was called back in to go to Bolling Air Force Base and set up, if you will, an offsite for where we could resume our work. Unfortunately, or to a certain extent, maybe fortunately, the temporary information technology facilities that they established, laptop computers, were unable to really link us back into our databases at the house. So there wasn't very much we could do from a constructive standpoint as the staff. We did begin back into the Rayburn Building and another within less than a week, and the Senate ultimately reconvened as well. So it was a case of kind of waiting and watching, horrified, but also encouraged by the overall response of the nation to that particular event. I have worked in the Pentagon for a number of years, and the area in which I had worked was just down one, or just over one corridor from the place where the aircraft struck. I later found out that one of my staff assistants from the House Armed Services Committee, who had left us several years before, and pardon me, gone to work for the Army staff in some offices that were offices that I had occupied when I was on my last active duty tour. So, and she was in that building essentially just probably 150 yards or so from where the nose of the aircraft came into the gap between the B and C rings there in the Pentagon. Room was filled with smoke, and fortunately another officer came through the building at that time, or into those offices, and helped her get out. Some very, very good friends that were engaged in the response, if you will, to the event. One of them, a close colleague and a friend, personal friend, but also a friend of my son, was engaged in helping clear some of the bodies and all. And of course, mentally he was just somewhat maimed is too strong a word, but it very strongly affected his future life, as it did all of us. We had a new neighbor from the Forest Hills, where we live, there on Queen Street, whom I had met several weeks before at a party, and he was the Lieutenant General, the new Deputy Chief of Staff for Personnel, and it was his offices that were struck directly. I'm sorry, immediately adjacent to the aircraft coming through, but was unable to get out because the windows were too thick, couldn't be broken, and so he died there in his offices there in the Pentagon. I guess in retrospect, backing up somewhat, I had joined the committee staff when I retired from the Army in 1990. And just through to a certain extent, circumstance, had been able to get a position on the House Armed Services Committee, and had gone there as I was going through my retirement out processing, and to the a hearing of the House Armed Services Committee, and that was occurring 4 days before the invasion of Kuwait and by the Iraqis, and then became the ground operations person for the committee during the first Gulf War and all through that. Of course, what occurred there was an event that in the quote 4-day Gulf War that was very thorough in terms of its overall effect, but it also laid the seeds for what became the Al-Qaeda and its planning and execution of the attack. So a lot of issues, a lot of personal heartache on the part of a lot of us that we were not able to stop or to really deal with those issues, and then did have the attack occur on 9/11.